Hi guys, good morning to you all. So I'm going to start up the discussion on Angular again. Now, I think I just wanted to have some theoretical discussion as well because we've been doing a lot of practical examples and I don't really want you to miss out on concepts. So I just wanted to recap, whatever we have done till now in form of, a PPT maybe, and this will help you understand on, the various things that we've already done. And for today, like I said, we'll be focusing more on services and pipes. So we'll do some practical scenarios on services and pipes, and I'll make you, understand the meaning of each of them and how do you create them as well, and do some practical demonstrations around that. So we'll first, start off with the Angular or the Node.js discussion. I mean, we just did it yesterday, and we said, for any JavaScript to run, you just need to have a JavaScript engine. And you know that Node.js community, they've got Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine, and then the core libraries created around that. And for Node.js specifically, it uses an event-driven, non-blocking IO model, and I think there's a whole lot of thoughts around these, and if you just really want to understand why this is so lightweight and how this really works, then I'll suggest you to. I've got a video uploaded right here on YouTube, and just search around threads in Node.js, and you'll just see here, right at the top maybe. Maybe it just happens because it's on my own name. Otherwise, you'll see somewhere here. So you and other web-based applications. Just find out by my name here, like Puneet Vashist, and you should be able to find this link. So this really explains, what makes Node.js different from other applications. And if I think this is gonna in depth explain about how threads works, and you'll be able to compare with maybe Java or .NET applications as well. So that's one part of the story, and I don't really want to do this right here right now because it is going to take up some time to you know understand this. So I'm just going to avoid this as of now, and let's just get back to the PPT again. So how it is lightweight and weight and other things you need to understand. But if you remember, we discussed this right over here that you know you can do both server side development, and you can also do some development tools. So remember I mentioned this right here for you as I think I should just start calling it development tools as well. So you can do things like express, like what we did yesterday, and you if you want to connect to a database, then there are other packages available. If you wanted to serve some dynamic content, then there are options like Jade, EJS. But then there are other things like if you wanted to just run a task runner, like a gulp or grunt. And if you remember, we have already done HTTP, and we've also done some more part on it like TSC or TypeScript. So both of the packages you can get it from you know I think I should just mention this as npm repositories. So you can go get both of these from here, right? And now let's just go down further and look at some other things over here. So we just kind of created a server yesterday, and you can use the request and response model. And the point right here is that there's no multiple threads that are created by the server, because that's where the maximum time is wasted. And I think I'll have to uh, say it with some caution. So I think if you just look at the video around, then you get more clarity on how this happens. But to put it very simply and put it in a concise manner, I can say that you know uh, with Node.js applications, because there's no thread overhead involved, in certain cases really has a great performance, and you can utilize this performance without getting into the threaded model, right? So that's something very, very powerful here in Node.js, and it's a thing to look out for. Okay, so let's just you know, see the main, I would say, you know, USPs of Node.js. So it just operates on single thread. And that's a USP actually. And for all, non-blocking IO calls, it uses some background threads, right? So, and you can still do concurrency. And again, the video is going to list out, what are the different, um, or what is a different way of doing this right here. So this is more like a Node.js discussion, and I'm kind of getting you into, uh, just a basic thing around, how things happen. So when you send multiple requests to the server, there's only a single thread that's always working for you, and that's what we call as event loop in JavaScript. Now, for anything that blocks here, like, you send a request and the request is to read a file, it's a blocking IO request. So for file system, it's gonna, you know, put this on a separate thread. There are already kind of, bunch of threads available right here, but that's that here is the main thread that really, is going to serve up everything. So anything that blocks, give it to available uh, thread pool. Otherwise, just continue processing right here, and once it is available, it's going to, call back, and we can process the request and send the response right here. So that's how, things have been happening in Node.js. Now, we've already created a server using Express. I think I don't really need to go down to code here. It's really easy and nice. And we've also talked about, npm and what it really means. So we'll today, focus mainly on services and pipes, like I said, on Angular. And let's just get down to the architecture first of all. So I'm going to get into this architecture. I mean, you've not really seen this before, but at least we've just done this part right here, which is enclosed in a module. Now, remember we said all the applications that we create on Angular, they're going to have a module, and we've been calling that, module by the name app module itself. Now, app module is going to have a component which is always associated with a template. And if you just wanted to read the data from the component into the template, you'll be using something like a property binding. And you know the component is always wrapped around with metadata, so that you can define your selector and you can define the template here as well. And if you just need to read it from template into the component, then you'll just use something like an event binding right here. So that's the whole picture about module that we've done. Now, what we have not done is services right here. So we are going to look at services. Now, with services, we'll discuss in detail, how dependency injection really works right over here. And then there is something else here, which is directives, which probably will also, come up in some future course. So I think this should be clearer to you. Let's just go down and map the whole thing with what we have seen up till now. So we'll look at module and what module is in our code. So I'll just take you to the code. And you notice we kind of created our module. So the module is app module in this case, and it has declarations for all the components present in this particular module, right? Now let's just talk about one component right here, app component. So within the module there are components. Now let's just verify this. So within the module there are components, and components have their own templates as well. So let's go down to the component now, and I'm going to go down to app component maybe first of all. You notice it has a template right here, and then the component has its own methods and properties right over here. So that's what it is. So it has a template, and it has got, in the component, methods and properties. If you just wanted to read a property into the template, you're going to use a property binding. And the example of this is we've used right here caption. So when you try to read caption, it's just going to evaluate the value of whatever there is in the caption, and it's just going to be able to read the values into the template. While if you just do a event from here, like we just did maybe a click event, if you remember yesterday. So we just said click. So from template, if you just want to get down into the component, then it's going to be certain event right here. Like I said, increment count on a click event. Or you can also kind of create your own events, like we did capture, caption. And what was happening is we were able to, from the component, which is like the parent component as of now, app component, we were able to send values into the child component, which is the badge component, and we were also able to send values back from the badge component. So the way you send as an input, we discussed yesterday as data binding, is using these square braces, and I can send it as an input, and I can utilize it right here. So for example, caption is being sent from here as an input right over here, and then I can just use this caption in my template, like read it back into the template. And from here, I can also produce an output. So basically, a badge component has an input as a caption and a capture caption as an event happening. So you will specify it right here. Maybe uh, the output is right here, but on the increment when somebody presses it, it's just going to capture caption, as in just read the value of the caption and emit this particular event. While you emit this event, it's going to be caught up by the you know this kind of curly braces. You notice this is the same as I should say parenthesis rather. This is the same as our click. So all the events are put up here, and then I can just do this handle capture here. So a module basically composes components within it, and the components have templates and component, and that's what we have depicted right here. Now we're going to look at services, but I think that's going to happen later. But let's just look at what do we have in this architecture as a whole. So we have a module, we understand this. We have got a component, we understand this too. And like a component also has a template along with it, and we know this. A component is bind, or has a metadata that really tells about what the component is all about. And I think one of the examples here could be like this particular component has a selector. So anywhere you want to use this particular component, you'll be using app root. Similarly, a badge component has got a selector right here, which is UST badge. So if you just wanted to use this anywhere in the application, you'll have to use this. So this is the metadata. I mean, if you don't really have any class annotated as @component, it will not become a component. So it's really important to use this, and this also tells like where is the template. Now in this case, the template is all here, but you can specify your template URL as well and point it to a HTML file where you'll want to have this. I think this is something that we'll look in some detail later on. Okay, so we understand these parts right here. Now let's just get back to the PPT, and I'm going to talk a little about data binding. So from yesterday's session, if you remember, we just talked about property binding, event binding, and string interpolation. Now, for today, we're going to skip on the directive section, and we are going to jump onto services. And services, we're going to discuss dependency injection as well, right? So this is some parts that are missing from this particular course outline, and I'm going to cover that as well. Now, let's just discuss these modules first of all. And I think anywhere you see complexity, it's a good idea to create modules in an application. In fact, if you see Angular, it has been even 1.x that has been divided into modules. But like I said, with Angular 4 now, they've just taken it to a new level altogether. So everything is just the way you have to define anything and everything. It has to has a module first. So an artifact can only be put into a module. You cannot just create a component or a service without first having a module. So that's the best part about this. And you can import all the functionalities of the module, make them public, and without kind of disrupting the system, you can just use it as a whole. I mean, that's what module is. It's kind of a reusable, bigger chunk of functionality to put it. And I think why modules, I think you would understand that it allows you to maintain the code, avoid any namespace issues, and it just becomes reusable, right? So let's just talk about I'm going to skip this discussion because this is something that we've already seen in the code. So you got to import the module right here. So I'll just go to the code here. Maybe this is where you understand. So the annotation for this particular class is @ng module, the metadata for this. And you notice this metadata really tells the module like uh, it's going to import certain modules. I'll tell you about browser functionality later on, but in the declaration sections, it tells you that you're going to use two components in this particular module. If you have more components, you can comma separate and write some more over here. And then the bootstrap component or the startup component is this app component, right? You can change that. but as of now we have a relationship going on. So app component composes badge component. So it's not a good idea to bootstrap the badge component. That's why I've just done this like here. Okay, so let's just get back. Now, why do we create components? So we've just concluded the discussion on why modules and why modularization. But I think components have always been kind of smaller blocks uh, in your whole module. And I think 1.x also, they also had MVC pattern, and the MVCs was within the module. Similarly, we have a MVC module here as well, and component really acts as a controller maybe, and then this can really be a small part of the whole module. So consider you have a complex module and there's small parts in it as well. Then you can just define components, for those small parts. Okay, so a controller class has always a template. That's something that you have to remember. So, uh, and there will be only one component per DOM element. There cannot be many, components in a particular DOM element. So, just remember that we can always use this template URL as well, like here, but I am going to do it in some other, parts. So template is nothing but HTML. You can have an app component HTML like here, and specify your template URL to be from current directory. Find out this particular template and just use this like here. So even I can move my code uh, in the ID right here. Like I can move it from the component, or the whole template, and I can move it into the template URL and place it into a certain file, right? So I'll maybe do it in some subsequent sections. Now, so you've understood metadata. We've already looked at ng module at the rate component, and we'll also look at injectable, the way we create services. Now there's certain parts of it, and let's just talk about at the rate component configuration. Now, module ID is a little complex, so again, we'll skip this as of now and talk about this later. But there's something called a selector. So selector, we've used app root right here. You understand it's like the tag name for that particular component, right? And template URL is going to be the HTML or the view part of this particular component. Now, providers is where services will fall in. So if you have to dependency inject a service, then you can just use providers, and that's going to do the job for you, right? Now let's talk about data binding like we did yesterday. Remember, we've already looked at string interpolation, which is this kind of just a read-only value. And if you just wanted to read from the uh, component into the DOM, like you can use a property, and the right hand side is always going to be evaluated. This is something that we've done. So it's component to the DOM, and then event is going to be from the DOM into the component, right? We've used both. Remember, we've created a caption property that we are sending a value into the uh, and I'll just repeat it again, and we're sending value into the batch component. So the caption is the property we're sending into the component, and then there's something like an event right here, which is capture caption, and we're just kind of providing our own handler to capture this kind of event. So with events, things happen from the DOM into the component. Now there's a fourth one as well in data binding, but that's going to come up later. It's a combination of property. If you see this square parenthesis and then the regular parenthesis that we have, it's a combination. So it's both like an input output, and it works both ways. So if things change in the component, the changes will be reflected in the DOM, and if changes happen in the DOM, they'll be reflected in the component as well, right? So that's a fair bit about data binding. We already have looked at three, possible combination. I mean, out of four, we've already looked at three: interpolation, property binding, as well as event binding. Now, directives is something, like I said, we'll skip this for a while, and we'll just go down to services. Now, services are things that uh, your application needs to do, but it's not going to be part of component, right? So anything that a component does which is not related to manipulation of the template, or it's not related to the changing of the properties in the component, you're going to leverage it out to a service, right? Now one of the examples could be you wanted to create some logs in your application. Now, to create a logs, you might just create a logging service that's going to log something for you, and that's why we just kind of leverage out the logging to a logging service. Similarly, I might have a messaging service, like you wanted to send some messages, and then I just use a messaging service. So there could be many examples. Like if you wanted to communicate with with the server, so you might have a data service which can just send some AJAX request to the server and get an AJAX response from the server as well. So a data service responsible for sending up data. So services are singletons. They're responsible for doing a specific task, and they're all injected using dependency injection mechanism, which is very flexible as far as the latest versions of Angulars are concerned, and very powerful as well. So we'll see some of the examples, and we'll be able to you know draw some conclusion out of this. So we we will be discussing services now. I think services is one of the things that have been really misunderstood on versions before or versions prior to this, because dependency injection was very hard in 1.x. In fact, it was a whole lot of confused stuff right here. So I'll just make you see this. So with one Angular 1.x, we had all these things like factories, services, providers, constants, and values. And at least there was a whole lot of confusion between factories and services. Like factories is more for data and services are more for methods, and people would use factories for methods as well and services for data as well. So whole lot of confusion around which one to use, at least in first three. And then constants and values are still easy things, so you don't really need to dependency inject. That was like an added confusion here. So what came out in Angular 2 is just one thing. You just need to have a class created, and then you can just use it like a service. So for all these things in 1.x that we've been confusing with, there's just one thing in Angular 2, and that is just a class. Now, how do we create a class and then just make it like a service? So I'll make you see some code here, and then we'll just go down into creating some code for it. So I think I'll just, during this discussion, since we are on the theoretical session, uh, we are going to first discuss about services and pipes, and then I'll just make you do some code on services. So let's just go down to the service part right here. Now, the way we create a service is we're going to create a class, but we're not going to annotate it with @ component. We are going to annotate it with as an @ injectable, and that's class is going to have certain methods right over here. So it's just any method that we can write over here depending on what we want, and this class is then created as a service. It is just as simple as I've shown it to you right here. How do you use it is a different method. So if I just wanted to use this class in a particular component, then I'll make you see with some examples. But just see, this is a very simple architecture in place, right? And it's always shared. So we'll talk about this as well. Now, dependency injection, I mean, there's so many definitions around dependency injection, but to put it very simply, I can safely say, like, when once you as a developer are not responsible for creating objects yourself, and the framework lets you do so, then we have a case for dependency injection. So the dependencies is something that you don't really bother about your in your components. They're just injected when they're needed. So we'll have certain placeholders where we can write like provide us this particular dependency, and it's automatically going to be provided to us. We'll see, but the underneath picture to dependency injection is something like this. So there is already an injector uh, service available here that's going to look up to a provider and create an object and give it to us. So you don't really need to do it yourself. That's what really I want to mention it here. So it's a really powerful thing, services and dependency injection. We'll see it with more examples, but I'm just drifting this discussion into pipes. And pipes is more for uh, providing some formatting logic to your data, or some filtering logic to your data. So in fact, they've been named as filters in 1.x. So some examples of pipes could be like a date pipe, or an uppercase pipe. So these are all built-in pipes available in Angular. You can just use them, and I'll show you how to use them. Or you can just create your own pipes as well. So the idea is, like, it can just manipulate the view itself. If you just wanted to display a date, and then you can just easily do so by just creating a date pipe, right? We'll see the examples, but it's majorly about transforming the values within the template itself. It has nothing to do with uh, with controllers, and I'll just make you see this architecture diagram right here. I think it's just a little incomplete as of now, where a template can be attached with some filters. So, if you have to just place filters, that's going to be right here. The logic or the controller part is going to be using services to send some data to the server. So this is really the outward interaction with other applications. But filters are more to do with templates, and I think once we do some examples, we'll be better able to understand them. And so what has been called as in 1.x as filters, they're now just pipes, and just don't confuse these terminologies right here. The reason is because we use a pipe symbol to apply filters, so they've now just started calling it pipes again. And one of the examples is, if you just wanted to you know display the character name in all uppercase letters, then we'll just use a pipe right here. This is the pipe symbol, this right over here. And then all lowercase, then this is the pipe symbol. So these are like built-in pipes. You don't really have to create them. And similarly is date, so it can accept a date and a format. So format could be your own specified format, and we'll see this with some examples. And similarly, we can have a currency, percent sign, or a number, or a numeric formatter. And then you can have your own pipes, and this discussion leads us into creating some pipes yourself. So you notice, once you have to create a pipe, this becomes at the rate pipe instead of at the rate component or at the rate injectable. Now pipes are things that usually implement uh, from the pipe transform interface, and we'll see some examples when we get down to code. So this is more theoretical discussion on what we are going to cover up today, and how things are interconnected to each other. I hope that you understand all this, and if you have any questions, you can just let me know right now.